Good evening, Sasnucks. I'm Frumbie from We So Nerdy, back again with Katie to discuss tonight's latest Outlander episode, If Not for Hope. It's great to be here with you guys. How's it going, Katie?
Hey everyone, I hope you've had a great weekend. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and we can't wait to talk with you about it.
Well, this is a good one. This is a good episode. But right before we dive in, we always have the same couple of reminders. So folks, please keep in mind that our recap and review of If Not for Hope, prepared by Katie this week, is live, and it includes 3 new clips as well as 3 new images from the episode. So please do take a look at the review. The link is, as always, is right down below. So please do take a look and let us know what you think. Share your comments with us either here on YouTube, find us on social media, or directly on the website as well. So that's all for reminders. As promised, let us go ahead and dive in. So with last week's episode, we saw that our faves had departed Fraser's Ridge, and they were all on sort of individual missions of their own. Bree is in River Run, brought there by Murtaugh, as we saw, and she is trying to keep hope alive that Roger will make it back to her. All the while, she's also fending off Auntie Jocasta's attempts to marry her off to another person. Meanwhile, Claire, Jamie, and Ian are on a 2-month-long trek to find the Mohawk and hopefully also find Roger alive and mend the rifts that are currently in their family. And as for Roger, he is literally trying to make it from one day to another, and his struggle is so real. And finally, fan favorite Lord John Grey returned, and we saw his signature charm, his signature kindness and compassion, which were very much welcome in tonight's episode. And we're going to talk about all of those things right now.
Yes.
So, Katie, I turn things over to you. So for you, kick us off. What were the highlights for you? What were you loving about If Not for Hope? What caught your attention? Let's jump in. Go for it.
One of the first things, and I think that everyone feels this way, that caught my attention first in If Not for Hope, is that cold open. When it's like the shot of the shower head and then the water streaming down, and my heart instantly dropped because I knew who that could be based on the end of last week's episode. You know, did Roger actually touch the stones? And there was a part of me in the back of my mind that was like, no, Roger wouldn't do that. This is not real. But then I was also like, given the circumstances of where he was at the end of last week, I mean, who wouldn't attempt to just go someplace they knew was safe? Yeah. And then that led me down a whole rabbit hole of how long has he been gone in real time, and how would he explain his absence? And so beyond that, I was really happy to see that Roger was with the Mohawk, even though it's not a good thing that he is with the Mohawk, because at least he's someplace that Jamie and Claire can find him. Yeah. And so that whole scene just kind of ran the gamut of emotions between being, oh no, he's left, and oh goodness, he's back, and oh crap, he's with the Mohawk. This isn't good.
But also, this is kind of good because Jamie and Claire can find him. You know, it's interesting because we're able to watch the episodes a little bit earlier in the week, and Team Outlander was naughty because that cold opening was not in what we watched. So we watched it earlier and we're like, okay, fine, the episode. And then Katie texted me, I think it's this morning, and it's like, whoa, there's a cold opening, and whoa. So that was naughty. That was naughty. And that was highly, it was unexpected, but like in a cool way, like in sort of like a theatrical storytelling kind of way. I appreciated it.
I did too, because I'm gonna be honest, when I watched the episode Thursday, I wasn't even really thinking of Roger until the very end. And I was like, oh my gosh, he didn't go back. Yay. And then when I watched it again this morning, I was like, oh, wait, what? Like thinking that I had just clicked the wrong episode, watched the wrong thing. But I mean, that was really great. You know, just a little, I don't want to say gimmick, but it was fun. I mean, in a storytelling way. But yeah, I was not expecting that this morning.
Yeah. But you know, it reminded me at the end of last week, I said that we were talking about all these sort of callbacks and how this reminded us of the episode where Claire, like in mid-season of season 1, where Claire almost goes back through Craig Najun, but she's like ripped back by the Redcoats. And like this definitely reminded me of something similar, right? That Roger is almost able to go back, but he's ripped back by the Mohawk, right?
Wearing a red coat.
Though some of which who are wearing red coats. And you just think about, here he is, and he's making this trek, and they're trekking, and apparently they've been walking for 2 months, and you sort of like, it's bookends, right? We start with Roger and this sort of like dream he's having, or this hallucination he's having about being back in the 70s, but he's really with the Mohawk, and then we end with the Mohawk finally reaching their destination, and then like putting him through some sort of like initiation gauntlet or something. So it's like the Mohawk are like grudgingly impressed that he made it this long and he's still alive. So let's beat him up in order to initiate him into the Mohawk, maybe? I don't know. Or some sort of other punishment. I'm not sure what it was. But like Roger cannot catch a break. And I just like so much violence.
There was, and I watched it this morning and I didn't catch it, and then I was live tweeting tonight, and we had this theme of savagery throughout the entire season, and during that initiation gauntlet where he's going through the kind of line of warriors who are beating him, even though he falls down at one point, I guess head warrior Roger, even in this environment, if he's down, they don't allow him to keep getting beaten. Like they pick him up and then they're like, okay, you're back on your feet, you're good, sort of like a boxer in a ring. And then they're like, go on again. And they have some set of rules for this, whereas we've seen other people who, if someone is down, someone is hurt, they just continue to beat them. But these so-called savages have kind of like set up rules for something.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I promise I do. I'm just like violence, though.
Oh yeah, like yes, it's violence.
That's just it. I can't. I just need Roger to like stop beating Roger up. Stop. Leave Roger alone.
Roger needs a good, well-deserved break.
He does.
When or if they find him.
And it's gonna, well, we'll see. But Roger's experiences are the bookends of tonight's episode. But at least we think he's alive and somewhere in upstate New York with the Mohawk. So we'll pick it up from there, I guess, next week and see what's next in store for Roger, right? So there's like Roger and his individual trial and tribulation. And then we see Bree at River Run, and she has, settled into life at River Run, but she's dealing with her own sort of, I wouldn't say difficulties, but she's definitely dealing with situations and trying to like juggle a lot that's going on right now for her as well. And one of those things, right off the bat, we see her with Lizzie.
Mm-hmm. And Lizzie is one of those I know that she's kind of been I want to say sheltered-ish and very protected by her father before she met up with Bree and went on this journey. But my like someone needs to tell her just to put a filter in place because she says whatever pops through her head, and you're just like, no, sweetheart, no. And so, besides Brie being a fantastic artist, Lizzie kind of brings her food and says, you're obviously possessed. Like I've done something, all of the stuff that I brought down on you has, made you feel this way. And Brie's like, I'm not possessed. I'm hurt and angry. And then for a moment there, Brie has to kind of, where she was allowing herself to feel the pain and feel the hurt and kind of work through it, she immediately has to kind of put it back in its own box and comfort Lizzie.
Yeah. And
Brie is having to do that a lot with different people, like put her feelings back in a box and either comfort someone else or say, no, you don't get to feel that way right now. And it's really hard for her, I think, to process her trauma when she's constantly having to reassure everyone around her.
Yeah. No, I think that's really well said, Katie. And like she spends a lot of time helping other people to sort of manage their emotions and manage their expectations. And even I think about like with Lizzie, right? Like, she tells Lizzie, it was an honest mistake. Let's not talk about it anymore. And then that's not enough for Lizzie. Lizzie then asks, oh, do you think you could forgive your dad too? And that's where Brie puts her foot down. And she's like, even if I could forgive for what he did to Roger, how can I move on from those things that he said to me, right? And I think Lizzie recognizes that, we're approaching a line here, so she sort of takes a step back as well. Lizzie's a character. Lizzie's a character. She isn't very like to jump ahead a little bit. Sorry, like when Bree sends her to find Lord John, and like Bree has to tell her, Lizzie, be discreet. Like without that warning, Lizzie would literally be like yelling down hallways, like Lord John.
She would, or she would stop and ask every single person along the way, have you seen Lord John? Bree wants to meet with. And I mean, she's sweet and she's very loyal to Brianna, and I appreciate her so much. But I guess she's not discreet.
No.
She lacks that filter. And we see it again, like a little bit later when she's like, in your condition. And I'm like, you can't be saying that in here with people you don't know.
Yeah.
It was weird for me a little bit how Lizzie or how Bree forgave Lizzie so readily, but she's like, even if I can forgive Jamie or my father, I can't forget what he said, and I know what he said was really horrible. But I wonder how their relationship, if and when Jamie gets back to her, will heal from that moment. And we see it later with Jamie and Claire talking too. That's going to be such a trial.
Yeah, I'm not really. I just, I think it's sort of like it's the people who are closest to you that can hurt you the deepest. And I even sort of hesitate to say that because it isn't like Jamie and Bree have like this particularly like long relationship, but they were working towards it, right? They were working towards they were very vulnerable with one another, so they were working towards that. So I could see a situation where Bree was opening herself up to her father, and then to have him sort of cut her like that would hurt a lot deeper than this person who's, I think there's definitely friendship between Lizzie and Bree, but I wouldn't necessarily say that they're like BFFs or anything. You know what I mean? So it might be easy to just be like, Lizzie, forget it and let's move on. But it'd be very difficult to say something similar to Jamie.
I hadn't really thought of it like that, but when you say it in that way, that makes sense to me. That does make sense to me a lot.
Maybe. Yeah. But I thought one thing, and it's interesting, one thing that I was curious about was how Bree's time at River Run would go. And in particular, because I am who I am and I'm curious the way I'm curious, I was really interested in how Bree would interact with slavery at River Run. And I think I mean, and this is an issue that I had with the books as well, is like, even though like Claire, for example, Claire and Jamie and Bree sort of voice their disdain and distaste for slavery, they still make use of slave labor, you know? And like slavery and the use of slave labor is still sort of going on around them, and they still make use of it and they still benefit from it. And that I just felt was really distasteful. Because like even in the context of the TV show, right? Like Phaedra is like making her dresses and like getting her ready and things like that. And Ulysses as well, right, is there, and we see Bree sort of interacting with him and directing him, sort of unconsciously. And I don't know if I really like that. Although there is the scene where, you know, Bree mentions drawing Phaedra, and she doesn't hesitate to say that, yes, I'm drawing Black people, and it's perfectly fine. This is where I found inspiration, so I draw. So there is that nod to it, but still, meh.
Yeah, it's weird how they take a stance against what they're seeing and what's going on around them. Like Claire wouldn't even consider Jamie inheriting River Run because of the slaves that he would now be the master of. But they do, I guess, use them in a way that I guess they feel isn't as negative as the people around them use them.
Yeah, probably so.
They recognize that they're people and that they treat them kindly. So since I don't treat them like how everyone else views them, it's not as bad. But still, it's helping kind of keep this structure in place.
And it's still sort of participating.
Yeah.
But I can already sort of anticipate what, you know, some of our friends who are watching or will watch will say, which is that, you know, they're individuals. There's no way they can alter this like centuries old institution. And I get that. And I understand that in this moment I'm being nitpicky, but it's just something that I didn't like about the books, and I don't particularly like about the series as well, right? Like it's just background to, it's like Black people in the background to their sort of like white experiences. It's like, well, I mean, they are white. It is what it is, but still, that's just how I perceived it. But I will say that I thought that this he tells Phaedra that she's beautiful, and you could just sort of see Phaedra like flustered a little bit, like, I don't know what to say to that, you know? And I just wonder, I think a couple things. I think first, you know, as a Black woman, again, a couple things. As a Black woman, you know, in this society that, you know, that certainly places whiteness at a premium, I do imagine that that a Black woman wouldn't necessarily hear very often that she's beautiful in here, you know? So I do appreciate Bree for telling her that. But at the same time, also, I can imagine a situation where a Black woman, a vulnerable Black woman, wouldn't necessarily want to accentuate her beauty and draw unwarranted attention from the men in power around her. So I could see that as well. I'm sorry, I'm getting so mentally deep here, and I guess I don't need to, but that's just sort of what went through my head as well as I was watching. But I really like that scene.
I love that scene a lot, and I really hadn't thought about it in those two ways because that's not my experience, and so I didn't think about it in those two ways. Whenever she kind of gets flustered, I love that Bree was able to just say something kind and genuine and lovely to her, because I think that Phaedra probably sees Bree as different anyway, sort of like her mother was and how Jamie was to an extent. And I loved seeing her kind of sit there, and after she sits there for a few seconds, she kind of gets comfortable and she kind of smiles very slightly at it. That was just, it made me happy for her, because Phaedra probably doesn't have a lot of happiness. But whenever you put it in those two perspectives, especially with the latter of beauty kind of garnering attention from unwanted places, that makes it scary.
Yeah. I would say so. And even like I think about Ulysses as well. And I promise this is the last thing I'm going to say on this. I apologize for sort of droning on and on about this, but like I think about when Mrs. Alderdice, I think is her name, the judge's mom, is like, why would you draw black people when you could draw landscapes? And like I don't know if you noticed, but they flash to like Ulysses' face, and Ulysses is sort of like, what I mean? And like even when Bree says, if you would like to see the drawing, I could have Ulysses go get it for you, right? So I just imagine like Ulysses, how many horrible things he must have the occasion to hear about black people, but he's sort of like in the room as furniture, you know what I mean? Like, that's the perception, right? That he's just sort of there in service. But I just think about the things, some of the doozies that he's heard and had to endure, in his work as well. So that's the last thing I'm saying. I'm sorry, guys. That's the last thing.
I mean, you're right. I imagine his facial expressions, because the camera specifically cuts to him a lot. And I imagine it's because, like you said, people don't see him as part of like the conversation. And so his reaction is just like side-eyeing this woman, just like, what in the world? Just like it's what you said. That yeah.
But sort of outside of Bree having those interactions, we see that she has, several interactions with her auntie. And in fact, Auntie Jocasta takes it upon herself to set Bree up with suitors to get Bree a man. And I just thought to myself, so I'm not here to necessarily tell you all like my life story, but like it totally reminded me of like my mom and my aunties, because like they get so much joy in matchmaking. Like that's what they do for fun. Like my mom, I don't want to like throw her under the bus. Right? I mean, like my mom and my aunties especially, they get so much joy. Like if they could, like if they could say, oh, I was the one who introduced him to her, I introduced her to him, they get so much joy and out of that. So I could see Auntie Jocasta as like one of my actually real life aunties, just like, yes, we have this girl, this is my niece, we gotta hook her up, I'm gonna have some fun doing this. And that's what it was for Auntie Jocasta. I mean, I feel like she was having a blast the entire episode, where Bree was like trying to run away.
I think you're right, because I mean, this first starts with the dress, and then she totally uses that Mackenzie nature of hers to kind of rope Bree into deciding to attend the dinner when Bree didn't want to attend the dinner, by saying, you remind me so much of your grandmother, and she married for love, and just she played her. And so she played her, and she's playing her the whole time. And every time Bree does something that's, I guess untoward for someone of her class, she's like, oh, what a clever girl, the children these days. And she just brushes it off completely. But I really have a bone to pick with Aunt Jocasta, and that is, what was going through your mind when you were like, Lieutenant Wolf?
I know, ew.
He can come.
I know, right? I don't even like these suitors. I don't know. I mean, I just feel like maybe Auntie Jocasta was working like on like there was a quick time turnaround, so she didn't really have the time to pick the cream of the crop, except for Lord John, of course. But like Lieutenant Wolf, ew. Mr. Forbes, isn't that bad, but he's sort of creepy as well. And you can see him sort of creeping on Bree. So like I think like during the psychology game when Bree is like, you can close your eyes, and then Mr. Forbes is like, do I have to close my eyes when I'm sitting next to, so and so lovely? And Bree's like, yes.
Yes.
Like creepy. And then like Judge Alderdice, we know that he has, I wrote in the outline, his hair is so big because it's full of secrets, like a shout out to Mean Girls, because
and Bree gets him. Oh my goodness, he gets flustered. He's got a leave. And I'm like,
so much so that he has to leave the room, right?
I mean, gosh, and you're right. Like Lieutenant Wolf, in the first 10 seconds that she meets him, he's like, I was hoping that I could talk to your aunt about taking you to like this other place outside of, I'm like,
New Bern.
We just met you. Like, we're not going anywhere with you. And then Mr. Forbes is like, come in here, let me show you all my jewels for no reason.
Yeah.
But I'm planning on making something with one of them, your pick. And it's just, as the night goes on, you can see Bree like slowly like catching up with her going, oh my.
Yeah.
God. Like this is
why
I have never been so excited to see Lord John Grey in all of my life. And when he walked into that room.
Well, because the thing is that like Lord John sweeps in, he's charming as ever, and he's clearly the top dog, because as soon as he arrives, you can see like there's this look between Forbes and Lieutenant Wolf where they're just like, well, we might as well throw up our hands, because Lord John gets there and he's just like smooth.
Yeah, because he says, I'm an acquaintance of your parents. And then everyone else is like, well, it's over now. But I was so happy to see him because he, as much as we've talked in the past and kind of had our issues and where we've kind of talked about his intentions and all that stuff, we've always been very clear that we believe that Lord John is someone that truly cares for Jamie, cares for his family. And so seeing him and having him as kind of a touchstone for Bree in Jamie's absence, it was reassuring.
Yeah. I agree.
I came into that moment going, okay, at least Bree's not going, hopefully, be forced into anything that, she doesn't want, because Lord John's here and Lord John won't allow that to happen.
Yeah. Oh, well said. Very well said, Katie. No, I felt the same way, right? And even when Lord John says, your dad wrote me, or your father wrote me and asked me to come check in on you, and I was like, okay. And he gave me this letter that he wants me to give to you. This letter that Bree doesn't open, she sort of wrestles with, but I guess we'll get to that a little bit later. But absolutely. Jamie knows that Lord John will watch out for Bree, and Lord John, being his like super honorable self, does that. But it is interesting to think about his responses to the psychology game as well, although things don't necessarily click for Bree until a little bit later. But yeah, when Bree's like, do you, picture someone you're walking with, and can you see them? And then like Lord John is like, yes, I see him, very clearly. You're like, yeah, you do see him very clearly all the time.
And I love it because Bree's like, well, why would you see my dad? And he's like, well, you're sitting right here in front of me, and he told me to come and see you, and he plays it off so well.
Yeah.
And then once he kind of later on, and we'll get to it, once he sees that his cover's blown, he's very honest and open about who he's with in the woods and why.
Yes.
But that psychology game was fun. And I was telling Fumi before we started, like, if I hadn't known what the psychology game was about, I would have wanted to play it. But now I think that I would just mess it up. That I would try and purposefully see something that wasn't there, or that I thought had a good meaning and it turns out it's something wrong. but that would be fun.
I still think you can play, even though we know like the rules. I still think we can play it because like I was telling Katie this before. The subconscious is still at work. You know what I mean? So you never know. Maybe Katie, I will quiz you one day. One day randomly, I'll just be like, close your eyes.
When I have no time to prepare.
But not that creepy. Not in that creepy of a way.
Not that creepy. Oh my goodness.
But I guess one more thing that we wanted to say before we get even like turn to Bree and Lord John Grey stuff was more about the Jocasta and Bree relationship. And it is interesting to think about Jocasta sort of in thrown up against Lord John in this episode, because you think about the episode title, If Not for Hope, right? And really they are these two sort of opposite voices in the episode and opposite voices for Bree, right? So I mean, Jocasta is very much like, look, your man isn't coming back, you're pregnant, we got to get you married, right? Like hope isn't a thing that you can rely on. Hope isn't a thing you can eat, you know? So we have to take care of your security and you don't have options left. You can't be choosy here, right? And I thought that was that was tough. That was rough to hear.
But to a certain extent, I think Bree needed to hear some of it, because as much as we hope that Roger comes back, and you know, I hope if and when he comes back this way, but Bree she isn't completely in their time right now. You know, she's still thinking this will be fine. You know, I'll have this baby, and my parents will bring back Roger. And Jocasta specifically tells her, you know, she kind of puts her experience next to Ellen's, because Ellen also was with child when she eloped with Brian Fraser. But it was okay because that child was born in wedlock. Mm-hmm. Bree's child will not be born in wedlock. And she goes on to tell her, he'll be branded a fatherless bastard. His life will be ruined, Brianna. I know you once had a man you loved, but he's gone. It's not what you want to hear, but he's not coming back. He's with the savages now, dead or alive. The sooner you accept it, the better. You cannot live on hope.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking.
And it is, because I think that even if he doesn't come back, Bree needs to know that it's okay. Like I don't know how to explain it. I had a much better thought out in my head. But I think that Jocasta telling Bree this is not in a place of malice or in a place where she's just looking at this girl who is her great niece and saying, I don't want you to be penniless. I don't want your child to be born a bastard. I want you to be safe and secure. And this is how I can help you do that.
I agree. I don't think it came from a place of malice either. I don't at all. I think it came from a place of very deep concern and very deep care. That's not, because she's a Mackenzie, right? Mm-hmm. So like that isn't to say that Mackenzies aren't self-interested. Mackenzies are super self-interested, and Jocasta is super self-interested, right? And she thinks about all the way, like, how can she benefit from this relationship with the Forbes? How can she benefit from this engagement with Lord John? You know what I mean? So Jocasta is definitely there. She's self-interested, but that doesn't mean that she doesn't care about her niece. And I think she does care very much about Bree and wants Bree not to be in sort of a desperate situation or a dangerous situation. So I definitely perceive that care as well. And I guess it's the ones who love you that can tell you the truth, right? Sort of like the bare bones truth, I guess. And I guess Jocasta like takes it upon her that she's the one who has to, tell this difficult truth, especially after, the situation where, right before Bree sort of pretends to faint and Lord John brings her into that parlor, and sort of, Lizzie reveals that, that Bree is pregnant, right? So this is very much at the forefront of both of their minds, Bree's mind as well as Jocasta's mind.
And I have a question about that. So were they planning on keeping Bree's pregnancy a secret from whoever she was engaged to?
That's a good question. That's what it looked like to me.
Because I mean, she's showing she doesn't have that much long. So I was so confused about how they were framing that. Like if these men were just, looking and thinking she was going to be an easy bride, this would be a good union with, River Run. But
well, I don't think they were going to try to pass the child off as well. I don't think they were going to try to pass the child off to that guy as saying that this is your child. I mean, they would pass the child off in society as this man, like Forbes child or whatever. But I guess like once the engagement is done and like the promises, like the engagement promises are exchanged, I guess that it's sort of in there you can sort of reveal that, oh, actually I'm pregnant. But he's like the father is dead, right? Or something like that. I don't know. But that was interesting.
I was wondering about that. But part of me wonders why. I mean, Bree just showed up. Why don't you just say that she was married and her husband died on the voyage over? And
that might be, they might have been coming up with something like that to say. Maybe so.
Because then we wouldn't be engaged to Lord John Grey, although that is a plus. It could be Mr. Forbes.
Yeah, and that's like, okay. See, and I told you guys last week that I really like the dynamic between Bree and Lord John Grey, and I was interested to see how it translated to the TV show, and I really liked it. But at the same time, like in a way that I wasn't necessarily thinking in the book with the TV show, I'm like, Lord John must be there. Like, why do I keep getting trapped by these flippin' Frasers? Like, he must be thinking to himself, like, what is it with these Frasers that they keep like getting me jammed up in these crazy situations? Just like, oh, Lord John, so sweet and honorable.
No, gosh bless you. He is. He's such a good guy. And I know that half of you who are probably listening and watching are going, I could refer you guys to a video you filmed like 4 weeks ago, and you weren't speaking so highly about Lord John, and I will agree.
Very true, yes.
But we grow. Growth. And I really liked Lord John here. And I think that his dynamic with Bree is so awesome because they're both so passionate. And I don't think that he experiences many people kind of coming up and going toe to toe with him on a regular basis. And so Bree kind of, confronting him and saying, hey, I want you to marry me. And he's like, no, I can't do that. And he's like, I'll tell everybody. He's like, oh, you want to play with fire? I love that. That whole scene was so perfect, and they played off each other so well. I want to see more of them together.
Yes, I really like their dynamic, and it is interesting. Like, it's just like there was a lot of truth telling in that conversation that I don't know if I was necessarily expecting, right? Because like the night before, Bree like gets up for a midnight snack. Like she can't sleep because she's like all these thoughts are running through her head. She gets up for a midnight snack and she sort of sees Lord John and Judge Alderdice. Judge Alderdice, she now knows what his secret is, right? That they were together. They were getting it on. And I just imagine Bree wakes up the next morning. She, Phaedra tells her that Forbes is here to propose. And like Bree is like, I need to, like, that comes in her mind, right? That I need to marry, like, I need to get Lord John to propose to me by any means necessary. So if he won't do it of his own volition, well, then I have this secret that I can use to blackmail him. And I think it was shocking at first to hear Bree like say that. But then when Bree is like, actually, I wouldn't have told anybody. I couldn't have told anyone. And Lord John like knows that, right? Because you are your father's daughter. You know what I mean? So there was that aspect, but even like sort of bringing in Jamie as well, right? That Lord John confessing, his affection for Jamie, confessing that Jamie and Claire know that he's gay as well. There was just a lot of truth telling going on in that conversation.
It was. oh goodness. And I think we talk about Lord John getting so wrapped up in all the Frasers, schemes or just horrible situations.
Situation.
This is like the second woman, a Fraser woman in like the last few months who has kind of called him out on performing his husbandly duties. And Lord John is tired of it.
Yes, he is.
He's like, I'm perfectly capable of handling my husbandly duties. And, and so that kind of takes Bria back because I think at that moment she considered him a safe choice.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, this is someone that I can trust that won't be interested in me, and he can go live his life and I can go live mine. And we just, we'll just be friends. We'll have a relationship that's based on kind of a mutual agreement. And then in that moment, she's like, it never crossed her mind. And then they sit down and he opens his heart and tells her all these things. And then Bree kind of opens up and tells all this stuff, including the fact that the father of her child may not be Roger. It may be this man named Stephen Bonnet who raised her. Yeah. And when she says his name, there's a part of me that goes, Lord John Grey is filing that away.
Yes, he is.
He's not going to allow this man, if he comes into contact with him or hears his name pass, in passing, Lord John Grey will do what he can to make sure that Stephen Bonnet is held accountable.
Yeah. I believe that. I sincerely believe that. Right. But it's interesting because even that, when they initially part ways, Bree is walking back to the house and she's thinking, I'm about to be engaged to this creepy guy. And then, Lord John sort of sweeps in and is like, dear, did you tell him the good news? We're engaged, right? And you can just see like Auntie Jocasta's face, right? Auntie Jocasta is so proud. She's like, I don't know how you pulled it off, but it's because you're a Mackenzie. I knew you could do it, girl, right? And like Forbes is forgotten. Like Forbes, are you in the room? I don't even know when you leave the room. Be on your way. So that was, I thought, really interesting as well, and sort of leads into a second conversation between Lord John and Bree as well.
I love that. And gosh, goodness, he just comes in, and at that moment when Bree's looking at Mr. Forbes, and I hope this doesn't work out. He comes in, and like I text Boomby and I tweeted it too. Like, I'm convinced that Lord John Grey sounds like Wesley in The Princess Bride. And it makes him endearing to me. And so during that whole scene where he's like, did you tell him our good news, darling? I was just like, that's Wesley. Like, I could just hear it. And I don't know, maybe I'm just delusional, but I could hear it. And Mr. Forbes is just gone.
Like, be on your way, sir.
Aunt Jocasta's like, Mr. Forbes, and just kind of, it's gone now. And I love when she's like, all of her plotting and scheming has paid off, and she's like, you're a Mackenzie. And I imagine for Aunt Jocasta, that's like the highest praise that you can give Brianna at this moment in time. Like, you did it, girl.
You are your grandmother's granddaughter.
Yes.
And it's it again, we end with we talk about Jocasta, and she's thrown up against Lord John in this episode because Lord John and Bree go on to have another conversation where Lord John is all about hope. That hope is the very essence of love, and just again confessing that I have a son and he is not my biological son, but I still love him very much, and Roger will accept this child as well, right? And I thought that statement of hope and that statement of love and that statement of, because like Bree is completely out of communication with her parents. So her parents might be dead for all she knows, right? So Bree feels, I can imagine Bree in this episode feeling that she is on her own, right? But it's Lord John who's like, I trust your parents. I trust your dad. Your dad is an honorable man. You don't want to hear it, but your dad is an honorable man, and he made a promise to you, and I trust your dad. I trust your parents to fulfill that promise. So you don't have to be in a hurry. You don't have to be in haste. You don't have to feel desperate. I will give you the protection of this engagement, but it's good. Have hope. And I was just like, Lord John, thank you. Thank you for that message. Thank you.
Everything you just said, honestly, he came in this episode and he was the MVP.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
He was.
Yeah, for sure. Right. And like, I can imagine Bree as well hearing this conversation and thinking and this is actually Katie who wrote this in the outline, and is like thinking about her own experience with her father, right? That if Frank could love me and I was not his blood, then I can have hope and have faith that Roger can love this child, even though this child may not be his blood. You know what I mean? So like that, touchstone was the word you used, Katie, and that's definitely what it was.
And this is something that Bree needs to hear several times, because this is something that Jamie's told her when they were on their hunting bees. And this is something that Lord John Grey has told her, and she needs to hear this, because it's not something that she can hear one time and just go, you know what, you're right. It's something that she's going to have to hear repeatedly because of the nature of her pregnancy, the trauma that happened, that same night with Roger. And it's going to have to be something she hears a lot. And hopefully, like, I hope that if or when Roger gets back to her, we have a Roger that has gone through all of these experiences with the Mohawk and with thinking that he was going to die and finally getting back to Bree, that is a Roger that doesn't say words without thinking them through first. Like, I hope that by the time we get him back, if we get him back, he's measured or more measured in how he speaks, because the first time he ends up getting away from Bree, it's because he popped his mouth off and got pissy and ran away.
Yeah, but this is and I've said this before. I'll say it again. This is a major distinction in my perception. This is a major distinction between Book Roger and TV Roger, because Book Roger is quite measured, and Book Roger doesn't just pop off, and Book Roger isn't super emotional. That's not to say that he's closed off. He's not closed off, but he's not super sort of reactive in the way that TV Roger is. So I honestly don't know. I don't know what TV Roger is about to do, but I mean, I certainly imagine, Katie, that you'd be right, that going through this experience would be a very, very unfortunate lesson in restraint.
I hope so. Oh my goodness. I really hope so. I have hopes for him. And so I guess since we've kind of come around on Roger, the people that are on his trail right now, we have Jamie and Claire and Ian, who have started this trek, this 2 months long journey to Mohawk territory to find and hopefully get Roger back. And I guess one word to describe this whole journey or two words, it's silent and it's cold.
Yeah.
Like, there is distance. There's so much distance between Jamie and Claire. The entire episode.
Yes. And so much so that Ian even takes it upon himself to intercede.
Yes.
Ian takes it upon himself to intercede and say, Auntie, you need to, can you please go to him? Can you please go to him?
And Claire's like, does he need help? She's plays it off completely, kind of like this oblivious way of doing it. And, Ian learns that this camp is called Shadow Lake. It's far up north. And they, in that moment when he's kind of talking with the Cherokee, Jamie and Claire are off to the side, and they're standing right beside each other. And I give so much credit to, Sam, and I always say her name Kate, but it's Kat, isn't it? Kate. Sam and Kate, because they're standing side by side, but they feel a million miles apart.
Absolutely.
In their body language, in how they talk to each other, in the subtle shade they throw each other's way.
So much shade. So much shade.
Oh my goodness, because she's like, I only know what I've seen in movies, but it's hard to tell fact from fiction. And Jamie says something along the lines of, when you only have one part of the story. And I mean, they're
like, if they were to make a movie about me, I'd probably be some fearsome brutes or something like that. And Claire's like, no, that's one side of the story. And you're just like, whoa. Whoa.
I was like, that moment you're like, wow, we have got a long ways to go. Thank goodness this is going to take us 2 months to get there, and we don't have a lot to do in the meantime.
Sure.
But their relationship is so distant, and young Ian going, go to him, Auntie, and she's like, does he need help? He seems fine. But I think that Jamie and they're both on the same page. They just don't know how to talk to each other to understand that, because they're both worried about Bree and Roger and how this is affecting them emotionally.
Yeah.
Because Jamie even says, we've lived not knowing if we were alive or dead, the other was alive or dead.
Exactly.
I don't want, and now Bree's going through this. And that's the crux of it.
Yep. Exactly.
Is they've lived through this pain, and now their children, or their child Bree, is having to live through it. Roger is having to live through it, and that's hard for them.
Yeah. They don't want that that for their kids, just as you said, right? And there's so much unknown, there's so much fear, right? So I even think about when Rollo finds the bones of the Mohawk's other captive that was with Roger, and Ian's like, I recognize that coat, I recognize that missing 2 fingers, that this was someone, this guy was with Roger. And there's there's fear. I mean, is Roger dead? But I guess if Roger was dead, his bones would be here too. So maybe Roger is alive, right? So there's so much unknown. There's so much fear of the unknown. There's so much, there's so much also like hope, I guess. I mean, there's maybe not hope in that particular moment, but like wanting for there to be hope, like wanting to strive for that hope. Which I think is what eventually allows Claire and Jamie to reconnect, is that they can sort of meet each other on that, from that same, in the sense that they want the same things.
Yeah, and that moment, they bury the bones, they bury the remains of this person, and Jamie said, I don't remember who said it first, but Jamie said, we don't know him, but he was someone's child. Mm. And that's pretty much the conversation starter that's needed, is this is someone's child. No matter who we come across, someone's lost something. We don't know what this man did to get into this position, what happened to him, where his family is, who he is, but he was someone's child. He was a person to someone. And so that evening, Jamie and Claire kind of finally get to talking, and Jamie confesses something that I think that he's probably been wanting to talk about for a long time, especially since Bree came back into the picture as being right there in front of him. But it's kind of his jealousy of Frank and his concern that he can't be a father to Bree because of the things he said to her. And, Claire says, that's not true. And he says, you heard her. She said that Frank would have never said that to her. And I think Jamie really needed to get all of that off his chest.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But I think he also needed, I also think that he needed the reassurance from Claire, right? That,
yes.
That, no, Bree, Bree's just like you. You said things when you were angry that you didn't mean. She said things that, in anger that she didn't mean, and that she's hurt. But, you all will reconnect. It will be okay. I thought what stood out most to me about that conversation as well was Claire essentially saying that there is someone in our lives who comes ahead of this relationship I have with you. And it's this relationship with Bree. And Jamie sort of being like, I understand that, right? So I just thought that was sort of, more generally speaking, sort of taking a step back, a really interesting, interesting dynamic. I mean, I don't have any children. I am also not married. But I just wonder, is that a conversation that married couples often have or have to have? It's like, we are married to one another. Our relationship matters, but this human being is literally a part of me. Like this human being is literally a part of me, and I just can't, that supersedes almost any other connection that I could have with another human being, right? Yeah. I just thought that was interesting to think about. I don't know.
Well, see, I do have children and I am married. But I think for me, it's not a conversation that we've ever had because it's kind of mutually acknowledged. And so I think Claire having this conversation with Jamie is because I don't think that Jamie has had a child in his life from birth until grown age to where I don't know how to say it without sounding like really rude, like Jamie doesn't love his kids. Jamie loves his kids, but he hasn't had the same experience in raising children as Claire has, and he hasn't had this marriage and a child growing up in that marriage to where he understands naturally that this child is priority number one, and I'm not necessarily going to tell everything to you because I do have promises here. And I mean, for like silly things with your kid, if they say, don't tell dad, but, and if it's something, silly and not life-threatening, then you just hold on to that. And for Claire at that moment, I don't think she ever thought that Stephen Bonnet would ever come back into their lives. And if he did, then they would I think she would have told Jamie. But if she told him at that moment, he just would have gone out looking for him or put out feelers for him. Yeah. And so I think that it's one of those things that maybe Claire had to tell him because he hadn't experienced the marriage and child growing up in the marriage. I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, Claire does apologize, right?
She does.
Claire does apologize. So, I mean, I think she she does recognize that she did a wrong thing, that she should not have kept that secret from Jamie, even though she does believe she was justified in doing so, but she is sorry for the consequences that her choice wrought. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this kind of opens up Jamie and Claire talking again. Yeah. And that's something that if you don't have Jamie and Claire talking, if you don't have Jamie and Claire kind of being open with each other, it's just such a sad place to be because they are this center that holds everything together. And for them to kind of come back together and experience that conversation and work through that issue, I was so happy that it was out in the open. It was worked through.
And then they did some working through, if you get what I mean.
Yes. And I don't know. I wasn't expecting that.
Jamie and Claire are champs at having sexy times in the woods. Champions. Since season one, Jamie and Claire have been champions at having sexy times in the woods. So you knew it was coming.
That's true, but I wasn't expecting it because they just had this super serious conversation about like Frank and all this, Bree and, parenthood. And then all of a sudden she just kind of like climbs over on his lap. And I was like, oh, so we're going here now. Okay.
We're talking about a full reconnection. I
was like, okay.
Reconnection. So that's where we leave them. And presumably they wake up the next morning and they continue their journey north. One thing that I was not expecting that I would enjoy as much was Murtaugh, Fergus, Marcelly, and Wilmington. Like number one, I wasn't expecting to spend so much time with them. Yeah. And number two, I wasn't expecting to enjoy it so much, especially the dynamic between Marcelly and Murtaugh. I was not expecting to enjoy that dynamic, that relationship so much, but I did quite a bit.
So I was telling Fumi this, and it hit me hard this episode, more so than it has any other episode. I have the biggest crush on Fergus, and it just came out of nowhere. But this is a man who is so in love with
Fergus or Caesar.
Well, he's pretty, and yes. But I love Fergus, how he's so in love with Marcelly, how he's so in love with his son, how he makes all these wonderful, right decisions. And you're just, oh, man, I have the biggest crush on him right now. And how he puts himself out there. He's always been so loyal to Jamie, my lord, and he's always been so just selfless in how he just runs forth into any situation where he's needed to be helpful. And for him to kind of take Murtaugh in and look into Bonnet's schedule, trying to figure out where Bonnet is, where he's coming from, to yank down the wanted poster because he's like, how are we going to do this when Murtaugh is wanted and there are people who know what he looks like all over the place? I really liked Fergus this episode, and I love his relationship with Marcelly. And man, it was good. I could follow them a little bit longer.
Yeah, I know. Well, the thing is, like, I don't know, maybe our friends who are watching, it seems like to me, like they were already at Fraser's Ridge by this point, weren't they? So I don't know. The show is keeping them in Wilmington. Maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, someone please tell me. But it just seemed to me that they were at Fraser's Ridge a lot sooner than this. But I mean, their time in Wilmington has a purpose, right? Because this is the team up that leads to, that's supposed to lead to Bonnet's capture, right? So ultimately that's sort of the goal. But as an aside, Murtaugh is working on like his regulator business, and Marcelly really doesn't like that that's going on like in her home. But Fergus says to her that like he would do the same for me. So this is, again, is part of that loyalty. But I have a question. I'm curious about, so when Marcelly, basically wakes Murtaugh up in the middle of the night.
You mean casually dropping cups all over the table?
So cash.
I love her. I love her.
She's like, ask Fergus to join you as being a regulator. And Murtaugh's like, if you're tired of being married, I could just take him out back and kill him now. And Marcelly's like, I'll either have a whole man or no man at all or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I didn't get it, right? Because I think Katie is, I think, Katie, don't let me put words in your mouth if I'm wrong. Okay. But I think your sort of perception of that was that, this would make Fergus is, he hasn't been able to work, and, he sort of feels like he isn't that much of a provider. But, if Murtaugh trusts him enough to bring him in on this regulator business, then that'll make him feel like that he's actually he has purpose, and that'll be a good thing. It'll boost his confidence and things of that nature. But I actually, when I was watching it, I thought it might have been a test. I thought it might have been a test. What if Fergus would have been like, yeah, I'm going to join the regulators? I don't know if Marcelly would have been happy. I think if Fergus was going to join the regulators and leave, that she'd rather sort of be without him, if that's sort of his goals. So it felt sort of like a test to me. I don't know. I don't know. Folks who are watching, how did you perceive that scene?
Well, I do, that is what I said. I think that Marcelly wanted Fergus to feel wanted and needed, because when she does ask him about the butcher when he first comes in, he says they prefer men who can butcher, not who have been butchered. And even the guy who he's talking to about Stephen Bonnet says, Bonnet's not ever going to take a man who only has one hand. And so I think he feels he feels less. He doesn't feel like a whole man being able to do these jobs because no one hires him. But Murtaugh looking at him and saying, I trust you, you have courage. If I had anyone beside me, I would want you to be beside me. I think that boosts his confidence in a way and makes him feel like he can do things. But as for the whole test thing, I think that Marceline knew the whole time that he would never agree to it.
Okay.
Because I think she knows Fergus, and she knows that Fergus loves her, that he loves his son, and that if it's something that could cause him to be taken away from them, then that's not something he's going to do. And I think that Fergus, having seen Jamie go through such heartache with Claire and with losing Brianna, they were fighting, and in this conflict that he knew that he probably could not win, that Fergus, he's not going to take that chance, especially if he's not already involved in it. And so I think that's just that was my interpretation of it.
Okay. And actually I'm looking at the chat, and actually Barbara WM has a couple of really interesting comments. She says, they gave Marsley Jenny's lines from book 2. In that book, Jenny asked Jamie to take Ian along to the Jacobite War for the same reason, almost line for line for book 2. And then later, Barbara WM says, wait, I'll have a whole man or none at all. That was Jenny's line from book 2. And I think Marsley, like Jenny, knew which decision her husband would make. Interesting. I mean, yeah, and Fergus, I mean, he tells Murtaugh straight up, right, that no, this is where I belong and this is where I'll be. But that doesn't mean I'm not down for an adventure. Because when Bonnet rolls in, they know exactly like where they need to be, the tavern they need to be at, the person they need to pay off to point out Bonnet, the lady of the evening that they need to sort of like bribe to not go into the room that she just let Bonnet into, how they're going to strike him in the back of the head, how they're going to carry him out down the back stairs.
Yeah, like I have a plan.
They know all of that, and that's how it unfolds. What they don't count on are the two like soldiers, I guess, who are like policing the area.
That was, oh my gosh, I was so and so I'm just gonna put this out in the world. I really liked it when Fergus was spinning that coin on the table. Just for
your crush is massive right now.
It is.
Like, your crush is showing. Your crush is showing.
I know, I really liked that, guys, by the way, just to shout out to being able to spin that coin on, because I mean it was well performed. Good job. But I love when Murtaugh comes in the room and Stephen Bonnet turns around and he's like, I think you have the wrong room. And Murtaugh says, yeah, I'm looking for a gentleman and you're no gentleman. Yep. And like Bonnet like comes at him and Murtaugh just like nails him on the head. And I have never felt such satisfaction. I was just like, yes, hit him again. Just hit him again.
I mean, and the thing is, we almost had it all.
We almost had it all.
Oh
my goodness.
And the thing is that, like, Murtaugh in this moment, like, he's quick enough of mind to realize that we're about to get caught up. But he's able to get Fergus out of that situation. Again, sort of like thinking about what Fergus says, that he belongs with his wife and child. And that's what Murtaugh says to him, go be with your wife and child. And sort of like punches him like he's an aggressor against him. Fergus is able to sort of like get away. Meanwhile, these soldiers have caught Bonnet, but they know also they've caught Murtaugh Fitzgibbons, the leader of the Regulators. And that is tough. That's tough. And I literally, because Murtaugh isn't in the books at this point. So I don't know what's about to happen. Like, this might be it. Murtaugh's, Murtaugh's time might be up. Or maybe, I don't know. But that's very disconcerting to think about.
It is, because when you said Murtaugh's time might be up, no. I mean, oh no, we had this whole plan where he was going to marry Jocasta and like help run River Run and remember our plans. Like, surely not.
Well, the thing is, like, Murtaugh's in trouble. Jamie isn't there. So who can be called upon? Not Lord John, because Lord John was remember when Lord John visited Fraser's Ridge, he was not about the regulator business.
He was not. They did not get along.
I don't know that they can count on Lord John. So it literally might just be Fergus and Marceline on their own trying to get Murtaugh out of this situation. That'll be interesting to see.
Yes. And maybe they can find like a couple of regulator friends or something.
Maybe so.
But I think Fergus, I'll put my money on him right now to do something, and because there's no way that they're just gonna let him go to the gallows or anything like that.
Maybe Jocasta can be called upon.
Ooh,
Jocasta can be called upon.
I'd be there for that. But then if she like shows that she's loyal or has some loyalty to Murtaugh, will that like put her in a bad spot with the?
Maybe, but she can also be like a character witness of sorts. I don't know if that would make a difference. This is literally pure speculation. I have no idea what's going to happen. But Bonnet is also arrested. And from the very first episode, we've seen that Bonnet has a knack of getting out of tough situations. So we'll see.
Yeah. I would love nothing more than for him to get exactly what's coming to him.
Like right now.
Yes, like immediately.
But not, the books don't work that way.
I know.
The books very rarely give us like quick satisfaction. Just look at Black Jack Randall. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, the books rarely give us quick satisfaction. So I don't know. But the TV show might change it. In the preview for next week, we saw Bree sort of reflecting on the letter that Jamie wrote to her. And Jamie is like, actually don't seek revenge. Like, revenge won't get you freedom. Meanwhile, we might see Bree sort of react against that and decide that she does want revenge and go try to seek that revenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
How will that pan out? I don't know.
I know that this episode again, there's so much going on in such a short time frame. Like, there's so much time that passes in this one episode, and so I imagine that next week's episode will cram as much into it as possible too. And so probably like if you're just guesstimating, like by the finale, everyone should be back, right? Like if they make it to the Mohawk country and get Roger, if he's still alive or whatever happens with him, like do you anticipate that everyone will be together in the finale, or do you think that this will be the season they leave it kind of hanging to where it?
I don't know. They should be. They should be back at River Run.
But will it leave out a ton of the book? Obviously.
That I don't know. Like Katie, like you literally, like when you were watching the episode, you texted me at like 20 minutes in, and you were like, so much has happened just in this first 20 minutes. Yeah. So I have a feeling that, like, number one, they filmed a lot, and number two, their editor is like on point and sort of like putting things together back to back to back. So we'll see. I think these last two episodes should have been extended episodes, and they might actually be extended episodes. I haven't seen anything about the episode length, So they might be like hour and 15 minutes, hour, maybe even up to an hour and a half episode each. So the episodes might end up being extended, but there is still a lot to get through.
I want both of them now, and just to watch both of them back to back so that we can have some closure. But then that means Droughtlander happens.
No, don't even. Why would you say that phrase? Don't even say that phrase in my presence. I don't want to hear that word. I don't want to hear that word. No, rejected.
Well, I'm trying to prepare myself.
Okay, no, fair enough. But I think that's all I had. I don't know, this episode was okay. I think Katie earlier when you said Lord John was the MVP, I'm of that opinion as well, that Lord John was the MVP. But there's just so much going on, and you feel the episode sort of working towards a conclusion, right? Sort of like these parallel storylines are working individually, but you know they're going to converge. You just don't know how and when they're going to converge, but it's going to be soon, right? So that's, I mean, obviously the point that I'm waiting for. But yeah.
Yeah, what you said. I don't think there's a show like Outlander who takes separate storylines like this. Maybe Game of Thrones is the only one I can think of that takes such separate storylines and has them so well edited that you know they're going to come together. You just don't know when. Because Outlander, it does that so well. So many shows that they try and split the point of views or different stories from different characters, it kind of gets messy. I don't think Outlander's one of those shows. They really write that so well.
They do. And I appreciate Team Outlander for that. So Katie, that's all I have. How about you?
Yeah, that's it. And
guys, thank you for watching with us this week. Also, not to pivot too much, but if you are have read A Discovery of Witches, you might know that the TV show debuts in the US on Sundance Now and Shudder. All 8 episodes at once this Thursday. So we are going to be recapping as well as doing like video reviews for A Discovery of Witches because we're in love with The Discovery of Witches. Wow. I love that book. Love the series. So the TV series, I mean. So if you're looking for another show to watch, I highly recommend A Discovery of Witches. So definitely keep an eye out and come back. We're going to keep talking about Outlander, but also consider coming to talk to us about A Discovery of Witches too, please.
Yes, we can't wait. It's super good. If you're into supernatural romance, watch it. It is fantastic. It's 8 episodes, right?
Yep.
It's 8 episodes. It's awesome. Yeah, so give that a go. It comes out Thursday.
Yes, January 17th, I believe, is Thursday's date.
Yeah, and so that'll tide you over a little bit.
Don't mention that D word. Stop.
I didn't. I was like, I'm talking about like binge it before next Sunday's episode.
Oh, okay.
It's just 8 episodes.
Okay, guys. Thank you very much. Have a good week, and we will see you back here next week to talk about more Outlander things. Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys.